Why do we hang on to situations that are truly not aligned with who we want to be? We have authenticity, and then we have attachment. Welcome back to the Secure Husband Podcast. Bruce Abbott, certified professional coach and founder of SecureHusband.com, the podcast where I help good men get unstuck. Why do we hang on to things that are no longer aligned with who we are? We stay in relationships that drain us. Could be your marriage, could be friendships, could be job situations. We tolerate treatment that chips away at our self-respect. We say yes when we mean no. We hide the truth to keep the peace. We betray our authentic self in exchange for attachment, for connection, for approval, security. That's self-abandonment. And then we wonder, why do I feel so empty? Why am I so angry? Why do I feel like I'm lost? There's a difference between authenticity and attachment, and so many men choose the latter. I know I did. There's a question that gets asked frequently in my coaching sessions where guys will say, I'm not sure how I got here. I wasn't in crisis. There wasn't an affair. There wasn't a big fight, but there was this gnawing feeling, this low-grade ache that you just can't ignore anymore. And one of my guys today, he said, I've done everything right. I've been faithful. I've never had an affair. I worked hard. I've shown up for my family, but somewhere along the way, the relationship switched. I stopped feeling like myself. Now, things were not going well in his marriage, but he wasn't angry. He wasn't resentful. He wasn't depressed. He was numb. He wasn't lost, but the deeper that we got into this, the clearer it became that he had traded authenticity for attachment. He'd given up pieces of himself slowly, quietly, invisibly, in order to keep his marriage stable, to keep his wife happy, to keep the kids safe. And now, when he looked in the mirror, he didn't recognize that man anymore. So we have to start with awareness. Like we always do, step one in the Secure Husband process is noticing the pain without turning away from it. And this takes courage, because before we can reclaim our authenticity, we have to face the places where we've abandoned it. So I asked my guy, I said, where in your marriage are you pretending? Now, at first he pushed back a little bit. He's like, I'm not pretending, I'm being agreeable. I'm trying to keep the peace. Okay, so we went a little deeper than that. Okay, where are you agreeing to things that you don't actually agree with just to keep the peace? That touched a nerve. So he listed a few things. He was talking about how his wife would always criticize him, but he would never speak up, or she'd interrupt him when he was talking, or he would go along with parenting decisions that didn't align with his values. One of the things that we talk about a lot in our coaching sessions is spiritual connection. And he would avoid these spiritual conversations because she knew that he'd mock his beliefs. He stopped asking for intimacy anymore because the rejection stung too much. None of these were really big deals on their own, but when you put them all together, they paint a picture of a man who has slowly disappeared. And it's not because he's weak, it's because he wanted connection more than truth, more than authenticity. And you have to notice that. That's where you get curious. That becomes your wake-up call right there. Then you make a choice. Once you notice, you choose. You choose to feel. You choose to lean into it instead of numbing it or avoiding it or blaming others. My client had spent years trying to be this good guy, and it didn't work. It worked in the beginning until it didn't. Because every time that he silenced his truth to maintain harmony, every time that he prioritized attachment over authenticity or ignored his gut feeling, he'd lost a little piece of himself. And over time, that compounded. So I asked him, when was the last time you stood up for yourself? I mean, not from anger, but from love for yourself. He couldn't remember. So we sat in that grief for a moment. And this was very emotional to him. It's not because he was weak, it's because he realized how many years he had lived muted, filtered, edited, afraid that if he ever showed his full self, he'd be rejected. And that grief that he felt, and yes, it's grief for a part of you that is gone, because you can't reclaim yourself until you've mourned the parts that you left behind. But you can move through this grief now, and you make a choice. There are always actions that you can take. They're surface level. You really have to get down deep into the core for true healing to get to the root of why you abandon yourself. You have to meet that younger you that learned that love meant self-abandonment. So we always have to go back there because the fear of losing connection doesn't start in marriage. I say that all the time in this podcast. It starts in childhood. My client had grown up with a mom who was emotionally volatile and a dad who was passive and detached. So he learned early that if I speak up, I get punished. If I have needs, I get guilt and shame. If I'm quiet, if I'm helpful, if I'm agreeable, then I'm loved. So he becomes this golden child, the fixer, the peacemaker, the one who's keeping everything calm. And now as a grown man, that boy is still in charge. But he's not choosing himself. He's choosing his wife in his marriage over himself. This was survival. He was choosing survival. So we talked about this. We did the work. We met the little boy inside. We told him, hey, you don't have to disappear to be safe. You can speak up without being rejected. You matter. Even when you say no, it's okay to disagree. It's a reparenting moment, and it's a shift from compliance to truth and authenticity. And when you can start to do that, healing takes place and change begins. And as you go through this journey, you connect to a higher power. You connect to your spiritual guidance, divine wisdom, something bigger than yourself, whatever your belief system is. My client started with prayer and meditation. He would have a dialogue with God and ask, God, what is the truth? And through this, he was able to understand the false core beliefs that were taking over his nervous system. From there, he was able to learn what his next loving action is, his next loving aligned action, loving to himself. So this helped him understand the trauma bond that he had between safety and suffering. Because when men struggle with authenticity, they don't just fear conflict. They've learned to feel safe inside the dysfunction. That's their coping mechanism they learned. See, my client, he kept tolerating the sarcasm and the dismissiveness and the coldness, not because he liked it, but because it felt familiar. It mirrored the emotional inconsistency of his upbringing. So even though it hurt, it also felt normal. Your nervous system, it's loyal to the patterns you grew up with. And he's not crazy for staying stuck. He's just conditioned to believe that this is how you get love. His circumstances conditioned him to believe that love always comes with discomfort and that connection requires a cost. So we worked on breaking that internal contract. He did the homework where he dialogued with his inner child. He dialogued with his higher power, and he started separating who he loves from what he tolerates. And that's when the attachment starts loosening its grip on you. And this is the point where you stop asking, is she going to be okay with this? And you start asking yourself, is this aligned with who I am and who I want to be? Then you can make powerful shifts, and they're simple shifts. You start speaking up gently but firmly in conversations. Through some of the practice exercises we did in coaching, he was able to soothe his nervous system to where he doesn't get flooded emotionally when things happen. And from there, he was able to set boundaries around sarcasm and passive aggression. He asked for what he needed, not with pressure, but with clarity. He expressed his spiritual practices without fear of ridicule. He started speaking up gently but firmly in these conversations. He started noticing change. He told me the other day that it feels like I'm back in my own skin again. You don't feel comfortable in your own skin. And yeah, his wife resisted at first, but over time she started trusting him more, not because he became more agreeable, but because he became more anchored. He became more grounded. He became more secure. That's what authenticity does. Yeah, it may rock the boat short term, but it builds trust long term. And then you become the man who chooses truth over control. You stop trying to control, even when it costs you comfort. You lean into that and you face it with courage, and then you become the man who you want to be. I used to think I had to choose between being true to myself or keeping my marriage. The only relationship that's really worth keeping is the one that includes all of me. And when I can have that relationship with myself, that does wonders for my relationship with my wife and friends, coworkers, other people in your life, family. See, from here, you don't have to be angry anymore. You don't have to be reactive. You don't have to seek permission to be yourself. You just simply are yourself, authentic, grounded. But it starts with trusting that being fully yourself, flaws, strength, softness, truth, whatever, perfectly imperfect, That's the only path to real connection. Again, not just with your wife, but with yourself. That's the journey. And it's not whether your wife joins you on it or not. It's whether you are fully authentic to yourself, whole. You deserve it. It's so common and it's so easy to choose attachment over authenticity. If you're doing that, man, no blame, no shame, no guilt, just love. I see you. I've done it. I've been there. I know why you've done it. I know how hard it is to risk being misunderstood and rejected or feeling unloved. I want you to know something. Real love can only exist where real truth is allowed to show up. Real love for yourself. No, you don't have to burn the whole thing down to reclaim yourself. In fact, I encourage you, just like a boxer who he could do shadow boxing, but it's really when he gets in and spars with a partner that he gets to work on his craft. I encourage you, if you're not in a toxic environment, work on this inside the marriage. You don't have to blow it up or divorce, but you do have to stop abandoning yourself for connection that's not built on truth and authenticity. And that allows you to lead with love. You can set boundaries with strength. You become secure, one decision at a time. I didn't understand the connection between authenticity and attachment. I didn't realize that I was choosing attachment over authenticity until my eyes were opened. And now I understand it more. I hope this podcast helped you out. If you're a regular listener, would you go give me a review? Listenership to this podcast is blowing up, and not many of you give reviews. I'd appreciate that. And if you need help getting unstuck, if you need some accountability, go to securehusband.com, fill out the form for a free 30-minute consultation. No sales pitch, no pressure, just a conversation to see how I can help you out. I'll see you on the next Secure Husband podcast.